What's a quote that permanently changed the way you look at things? You might be the sweetest peach on the tree, but some people just don't like peaches. This helped me get over my lifelong desire to be liked by everyone and allowed me to focus on becoming someone I actually liked. I've had a lot of worries in my life, most of which never happened. Mark Twain. Found it on a workbook for anxiety disorders. My therapist once told me that living in the future is anxiety, living in the past is depression. Only good way is to live in the present moment. Good luck. Ha. My girlfriend lives in the moment and I don't understand it. I'm already thinking of where we'll be in a decade. Feel you, we are not even officially together yet and I'm planning where we will move, and when anxiety overcomes me, how she will inevitably dump me. You're not alone. Imagining our inevitable breakup. I've been with my husband for 11 years, we have a great life together, and I still battle this kind of distorted thinking from time to time. Cognitive behavioral therapy counseling has helped a lot. Long time ago I was meeting two women on the sidewalk, and just as we passed each other I heard this one sentence from one of them. You don't notice your progress in life because you are always raising the bar. That is so true. When you're progressing, your standards get higher and higher. I cannot tell you how badly I needed to hear this. Truly, thank you and bless you whoever and wherever you are. I'm not op, but glad to see this sub being one of the most beautiful subs around. This is what keeps a lot of wealthy people from being satisfied with their current earnings and always yearning for more. Also applies to people always eager to be promoted even when it adversely affects them or their relationships. If we all just took a minute to sit and reminisce about where we are and where we came from, a lot of us may be more content in life. By the way guys, if you are enjoying this video so far, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It will help us out quite a bit, and if you don't enjoy the videos in the future anymore, you can always unsubscribe. Let's get back to the video. And now that you don't have to be perfect, you can be good. John Steinbeck, East of Eden. This is the one. Worrying only means you suffer twice. That's what I tell myself the night before a test I didn't study for. Because in reality, the only time a scary thing needs to hurt you is when it is happening. If there is something you can do to prepare, do it. If there isn't, then don't worry about it. My favorite move for exams is to procrastinate until the very last minute and then tell myself there's nothing I can do about it now, so I might as well not feel bad about it. My honor student days are over. Don't set yourself on fire to keep others warm. This helped a lot with my guilt and burgeoning martyr complex. Yes. This changed my life when I first heard it. It had literally never occurred to me to not sacrifice everything I was at all times for everyone. I had just been raised that way, and it's an entirely toxic way to live. I always think of the airplane safety briefing line. Remember to put your own mask on first before helping others. You can't be of help if you are also in distress. Doctor, heal thyself. Similar to the airplane line. Can be used for many situations. Perfect example, thanks. A similar one I recently heard. How egotistical is it to think your purpose in life is to fix all the world's problems? Do what you can do and assume everyone else will do the same and the world will get better. It's easy to fool someone, it's hard to convince them that they've been fooled. The first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool. One of the saddest lessons of history is this: if we've been bamboozled long enough, we tend to reject any evidence of the bamboozle. We are no longer interested in finding out the truth. The bamboozle has captured us. It's simply too painful to acknowledge, even to ourselves, that we've been taken. Once you give a charlatan power over you, you almost never get it back. Carl Sagan. Wait, did Carl Sagan actually say the word bamboozle, or are you bamboozling me? The Demon Haunted World, one of my absolute favorites. Sagan explores pseudoscience and popular misconceptions and dives into the history and psychology of why many people are easily duped into not only believing, but also evangelizing conspiracy theories, mysticism, new age, crystal healing, psychics and whatever other pseudoscience is out there. Carl Sagan had a very potent and poetic way with words, but bamboozled really caught me off guard. Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it is a quiet voice at the end of the day saying, I will try again tomorrow. Miriam Radmasher. I came across this a long time ago, at a point in life, that I really needed this lesson. It's okay if I feel sad and resigned, if my depression beat me for today, and I wasn't able to function. I didn't fail, I'm not weak, I will try again tomorrow. If you weren't afraid, it wasn't courage. Reminds me back, when I was about 10, I was over at a friend's house and we were talking to his grandfather who was in town for Christmas. His grandfather was telling us some stuff that happened during his service in the army during WWII, stories about him and his buddies, etc. He was talking about a good buddy he served with who just didn't give a did all of this crazy without batting an eye, etc. I remarked that the guy sounded really brave and his grandfather replied with something like, he wasn't brave, he was just a fool. And you don't need courage in combat if you're a fool. Whenever people bring up quotes like yours, it always reminds me of him and that comment. That mountain you've been carrying, you were only supposed to climb. Really helped me overcome a lot of traumatic experiences and difficult chapters in my life. I hope it helps someone else out there. It reminds me of the Buddhist parable. Two monks are walking down a trail when they come to a river. A woman is standing by the banks of the river. She is afraid to cross because of the current. The older monk says, I will carry you across, and he does so. The woman and the monks go their separate ways. Hours later, the younger monk says, brother, our order forbids us from touching a woman, yet back at the river, you carried that woman across. And the older monk says, I put that woman down at the river. You are the one who has carried her all this way. Dear Abby's response to a writer thinking of going back to school, but worried that she will be 40 by the time she got her degree. How old will you be in 4 years if you don't get your degree? You are going to be 40 anyway with or without your degree. It reminded me that letting age stop me from my plans was just silly. Also, working at a community college and seeing so many people going back to school in their 30s, 40s, 50s and thriving, the quote really spoke to me. I went back to school in my late 20s, gonna graduate after turning 33 this year, and I'm super jazzed to have gained all these new skills. Edit. Thank you everyone for the support and well wishes. Always remember that it's never too late to pick up new skills. I didn't start college until 26. The last thing I wanted after 14 years of school was 4 more years of school. I'm glad I waited too, because I'm certain I rolled around and made generally poor decisions, academically or otherwise. I waited until I felt like I was ready, had a better idea of who I was and what I wanted to do with my life, and most importantly, that I actually wanted to be there, and it made it so much easier. That's just my personal experience, not saying you can't have it all figured out when you're 18 or whatever. I took a year extra for college, then waited a year to see what I was gonna do. Best thing I could have done. I ended up with 2 degrees and afterwards so many career decisions at that point, and I had time to do deep research into them, whether they be more school or an internship or a job. I ended up with a job plus school. The axe forgets, the tree remembers, Zimbabwean proverb. People don't forget how they were treated, that's why it's so important to be kind. Edited to @ I honestly did not expect this to blow up. Thanks y'all. I saw this one time under a post about parenting, and it stuck with me. As a mother of 2 stubborn toddlers, some days are rough and filled with impatience and frustration. I use this quote to remind myself that how I'm with them will be what helps to shape them. My husband and I set the example for them, and both of us have childhoods. I don't want them traumatized like I was as a child. I want them to be molded with love, not negativity. People don't remember the things you say, they remember the way you make them feel. I really try to make my fiancé know that when he says things that are mean and hidden behind jokes, that it's easy to forget what was said, sure, but I'd never forget how he made me feel when he said it, which is why it burns more. It's been a few years, but I still remember feeling like I was a monster in the eyes of my peers. A longer time ago, I remember feeling unwanted and hated by my high school classmates. In middle school, I remember everyone turning on me. In elementary school, I remember feeling out of place. I'm sure, with time, I'll feel like even worse things. Not sure what comes after monster, though. Maybe people will attack me, or maybe I'll lose everything and feel like I'm nothing. Look again at that dot. That's here. That's home. That's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives. The aggregate of our joy and suffering, thousands of confident religions, ideologies, and economic doctrines, every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilization, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every mother and father, hopeful child, inventor, and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there on a mote of dust suspended in a sunbeam. Carl Sagan, Pale Blue Dot. This quote always makes me cry. I have to post a link to the image, as the visual really drives home the message. Oh wow, thank you so much for posting the picture. This is incredible. Makes me wonder if we're just floating around in a dusty house of some being who lives in a much larger universe. I always thought that our universe and all its space was the space between atoms in a significantly larger being. Our backquote years might be seconds for being. We are just a bacteria that happened to grow on one of the cells, and our space efforts are just us spreading like to other cells. Who knows if the in our own bodies are a more advanced population of life who have found ways of spreading across their own universe. You cannot convince people to love you. This is an absolute rule. No one will ever give you love because you want him or her to give it. Real love moves freely in both directions. Don't waste your time on anything else. Cheryl Strayed. Fake love is mighty convincing in a world where real love is mighty rare. I've had it to here being where love's a small word, a part-time thing, a papering on a very light note. This is almost exactly the concept behind love, is like a if you have to try too hard it's probably along these lines. This quote came to mind when my ex cheated on me with one of my friends. The seriousness of betrayal. One should rather die than be betrayed. There is no deceit in death. It delivers precisely what it has promised. Betrayal, though, betrayal is the willful slaughter of hope. Stephen Dietz. The first draft is just you telling yourself the story. Terry Pratchett. I'm not sure why this quote struck me so hard, but it completely changed the way I approach writing. Just get your ideas down in rune sentences, and asides to yourself and loads of at parts you haven't figured out yet. It took me more than 30 years to realize that a first draft isn't just a rough version of the final draft. It's a map for yourself and no one else. We're all critics. We're all so good at recognizing what about something, but then we're all so bad at making something. So just make something bad and then criticize it until it's good. Dan Harmon. And I think this quote where he elaborated on it is even better. My best advice about writer's block is, the reason you're having a hard time writing is because of a conflict between the goal of writing well and the fear of writing badly. By default, our instinct is to conquer the fear, but our feelings are much less within our control than the goals we set, and since it's the conflict between the two forces blocking you, if you simply change your goal from writing well to writing badly, you will be a veritable fountain of material. Because guess what, man, we don't like to admit it, because we're raised to think lack of confidence is synonymous with paralysis. But, let's just be honest with ourselves and each other, we can only hope to be good writers. We can only ever hope and wish that will ever happen. That's a bird in the bush. The one in the hand is, we suck. We are terrified we suck, and that terror is oppressive and pervasive, because we can very well see the possibility that we suck. We are well acquainted with it. We know how we suck like the backs of our untalented hands. We could write a book on how bad a book would be if we just wrote one instead of sitting at a desk scratching our dumb heads trying to figure out how, by some miracle, the next thing we type is going to be brilliant. It isn't going to be brilliant. You stink. Prove it. It will go faster. And then, after you write something incredibly in about 6 hours, it's no problem making it better in passes, because in addition to being absolutely untalented, you are also a mean, petty critic. You know how you suck, and you know how everything sucks, and when you see something that sucks, you know exactly how to fix it, because you're an So that is my advice about getting unblocked. Switch from team I will one day write something good to team I have no choice but to write a piece of and then take off your bad writer hat and replace it with a petty critic hat and go to town on that poor hack's draft, and that's your second draft. 15 drafts later, or whenever someone paying you starts yelling at you, who knows, maybe the piece of will be good enough, or maybe everyone in the world will turn out to be so hopelessly stupid that they think bad things are good, and in any case, you get to spend so much less time at a keyboard and so much more at a bar, where you really belong, because medicine, because childhood trauma, because the Supreme Court didn't make abortion an option. Until your unwanted is in its 3rd trimester. Happy hunting and pecking. Paraphrased, when people act crazy, they're either actually crazy, which is unlikely, or there's a good reason for their behavior that you just haven't figured out. Dr. David Burns in his book Feeling Good Together. Excellent book about getting along with people and trying to understand them. Edit. Wow, thanks for the awards and the discussions here. It's worth mentioning that, in my quote, crazy really refers to surprising or unreasonable behavior, not genuine mental illness, and good reason refers more to an explanation for the behavior. The point of the quote is to not write people off because you don't understand them. That is a concept in teaching too. Every behavior meets a need. Basically, when kids are acting out, if we can figure out what need is being met by the behavior, we can figure out a better way to address that issue and resolve the behavior. It's such a simple concept, but, sadly, as evidenced as a couple responses here, there are always people who push back and feel they shouldn't have to read minds or empathize when they see themselves as the victim. I get it, I was there at one point, but if you can just follow those approach for a short bit, it's immensely helpful. That's what I struggle with for a long time. Just because you can, doesn't mean you have to. You have every right to be done with someone's and not take it. Sometimes you have to understand that people are being you because they want/need control over something in their life. But sometimes they need a swift slap upside the head to make them realize that taking it out on you is still not okay, no matter the reason. There's not a lot of things worth caring about. Told to me by a close friend, and it really helped me get over my insecurities and self-consciousness. Think of things this way. After you leave school, there will be 2 types of people in your life, your friends/family and strangers you will never see again. You don't need to worry about being insecure and self-conscious with the first group, because they love/like you, and so it really doesn't matter. You don't need to worry about being insecure and self-conscious with the second group, because you're never going to see them again, so it really doesn't matter. If you've watched Schitt's Creek, there's a great bit about David doing his driving test that I use when I'm teaching anxiety coping skills. The takeaway quote from the episode is nobody cares. Strangers you interact with have no interest in you and are probably not even paying attention, so there is no point worrying about what they think. I asked my best friend with anxiety if she remembers any really awkward things a friend has done or said that I've done or said. She said no. So I told her that people don't think about nor remember any of her awkward moments. They are too worried about themselves. I wish it need not have happened in my time, said Frodo. "So do I," said Gandalf, "and so do all who live to see such times. But that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us." That quote never fails to make me tear up. I also really love, and I know it's not in the books, but when Galadriel asks Gandalf why he chose Bilbo in The Hobbit, he says, "I do not know. Saruman seems to think it takes great power to defeat a great evil. But that's not what I found. It is simple acts of kindness and love that keep the darkness at bay." Why Bilbo? Perhaps it is because I'm afraid and he gives me courage. People fail to realize that Gandalf is not a wizard, he is a Mawya. In short, an angelic being on the same level as Sauron, who finds a small hobbit's courage inspiring. It's beautiful to me. Tolkien fought in WWI. He saw the horrors of that war, and in spite of it all, had the wisdom to know that it wasn't the generals, politicians, or great leaders that ended the war. It was the young men fighting, the mothers back at home sewing uniforms, the young children that gave the men something to fight for. It's absolutely beautiful. I used to have some pretty severe anxiety as a kid and would freak out if there was any hint of danger or risk of moderate failure. My parents started not just saying what's the worst that could happen, but actually talking me through the actual worst case scenario, and more often than not, things would still always be fine. I still run through a hypothetical worst case scenario before making big decisions or intense situations, and it still calms me down. My dad wrote about this once. He said, "What is the worst thing that can happen at work? I go over budget on a construction project, I get fired in disgrace, my reputation is ruined and no one will hire me, I lose my house, my life savings, and my wife, I end up living in a cardboard box on the riverbank, then there is a heavy snowfall and my box is crushed." Well, that's not so bad. This is exactly how my worst case scenarios go. Add in mental health crisis and ending up in jail for either self-medicating with hard or committing a robbery. Then get attacked repeatedly in prison, worsening my mental health. Eventually end up back in the real world and be so messed up that I end up selling my body for crack until eventually the cycle of self kills me. Cops find my body decomposing beyond recognition and get buried in an unmarked grave after no one is able to identify me. It's not a quote. A distant friend once told me that you have to work at friendships. It completely changed my outlook. I just thought friendships came naturally to people wanting to hang out, gifting, etc. But since then, I recognized I needed to do my part, and my friends were doing this. If you want a friend, you have to be a friend. Maya Angelou. I have hung out with friends when I was tired or moody, but I've pushed myself to show up, have a good attitude and be present. Everything requires effort. Friends don't come to you just because. Yes. Especially if it's their birthday or a performance. I have this rule that if someone invites you to do something on their birthday or asks you to come to a performance of theirs, even if you don't feel like you're that close, even if they didn't come to your thing last week, even if you're worried about feeling awkward, you show up for them. It feels incredible when people show up for me, and I have made and kept a lot of friendships simply by showing up for others. The people who say you can't and you won't are usually the ones scared that you will. On the wall, the background of an episode of The Killing. Good show. Yeah, must have watched it 5+ years ago now. Was good, but remember a lot of episodes and drama about one murder. This is the end of the video. Thank you guys for staying with me till the end. If you enjoyed watching this, you might as well watch these too.